Christmas this week is always a big one for Hollywood, and this year is no exception. WGBH News arts editor Jared Bowen has a rundown of some of the major films out for the holidays.
Is that a threat?
Yes! The big screen gets biblical this holiday season with the epic Exodus, Gods and Kings, as Moses, Christian Bale, fights the Pharaoh Ramses to lead his massive exodus through the Red Sea.
Look at me.
Unbroken is the best-selling true story of one World War II airman's extraordinary resilience as a prisoner of war. During that internment, closeted, socially awkward mathematician Alan Turing was working to crack Germany's so-called unbreakable codes in England. Benedict Cumberbatch stars in The Imitation Game.
I'm afraid these men would only slow me down.
Popular at school, were you?
2 decades later, a Cambridge University cosmologist named Stephen Hawking was on the verge of both his greatest scientific success and a life-changing ALS diagnosis. A story told in The Theory of Everything.
While there is life, there is hope.
Selma delivers us into the 3 volatile months in which Martin Luther King Jr. led protests that culminated in the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
What happens when a man stands up, says enough is enough?
The True Tales continue with Foxcatcher.
I am a patriot. I want to see this country soar again.
Steve Carell is an exceedingly wealthy DuPont heir, sporting an unnerving obsession with Olympic wrestling. And Wild journeys us into the hike the deeply flawed Cheryl Strayed took to turn her life around.
You get lonely. I'm lonelier in my real life than I am out here.
You're gonna love this stuff. Why are their eyes so big?
In Tim Burton's Big Eyes, Amy Adams is a reluctant partner to one of art history's biggest and most bizarre frauds, as her husband took credit for her paintings of big-eyed children.
You wish to have the curse reversed?
Into the Woods is the long-awaited film adaptation of Stephen Sondheim's not-so-happily ever-after musical, just as Annie makes her way from stage to screen.
Sun goes down, tablet starts to glow, everything comes to life.
The kids will also enjoy one more night at the museum. Its Secret of the Tomb installment marks one of Robin Williams' final film roles, and it's the end for The Hobbit, as the trilogy tracks the beloved story's end in The Battle of the Five Armies.
Will you have peace or war?
It turns out there is a war on Christmas.
All right, we've got lots to talk about. Here to weigh in are Jared Bowen, and along with Joyce Kulhwick, who's a longtime arts and entertainment reporter and a member of the Boston Society of Film Critics, and Tom Meek, president of the Boston Society of Film Critics. I've only seen 3 of those. You've seen them all, so what do you want to start with? You want to talk about The Imitation Game?
I want to talk about The Imitation Game, which I just saw the other night, and I thought was really such a well-made film. Benedict Cumberbatch is so extraordinary as Alan Turing, who just, he wears the stress that this guy is under, keeping his homosexuality under wraps. Also has, he's probably on the autism spectrum because he's so smart but can't quite relate to people, so he alienates everyone, and Benedict Cumberbatch wears that with such palpable tension. I just think makes the entire film.
And you still like him. I mean, that's the thing. He has such incredible charisma. I was never necessarily a big Benedict Cumberbatch fan, and now they call the fans. Can we say this on TV?
I don't know that you can.
Cumber bitches. You can leave it out. Cumber bunnies. Cumber cookies. Well, I'm one of them now.
The other side to the story that's really interesting is this guy is trying to make the first computer to decode Enigma, to break open the war, and he's under a great deal of pressure from non-believers inside the British government. And I think, he's just living on the edge on 2 sides, and I think that those 2 bits of tension and the relationship with Keira Knightley as the woman who realizes he's probably gay and will extend him their friendship and marriage in order to keep the experiment to break Enigma going.
So what? All right. So
but they do give short shrift to the Poles who worked on that project first, I will say, in the movie, and that's true. And Keira Knightley Knightley does a phenomenal job in this film as well.
Well, and I think the companion piece to this is a theory of everything, which everybody is talking about for Eddie Redmayne's performance, and rightly so. In fact, it seems to be in Oscar circles, it's either Benedict Cumberbatch or Eddie Redmayne as Stephen Hawking. And you see him just at the beginning of his career when there's such great promise. He has just had this major revelation, and then suddenly he gets this diagnosis. But it takes us into his family, and you see you see the effect that it had on his wife. And of course, it was an extraordinary burden that she had, and that all manifests itself in the film. It's a very humanistic piece.
What I didn't like about the theory of everything was that it kind of focused more on the romance instead of on the science in a way, which is fine. It's very sweet, but I wanted more of the other, and I thought Imitation Game did a much better job of sort of covering the science. I almost felt like I understood how a computer worked, whereas the Redmayne thing was kind of romantic and sweet.
Well, and I think that relationship between Keira Knightley and Benedict Cumberbatch is more realistic in the fact to the film, because in the other film he ends up divorcing, that they ended up splitting, and so the story doesn't have that resonance over time. I mean, Alan Turing ends sort of a tragic end after this, and their lives sort of intertwined a few times, and there's some great poignancy.
I want to talk about one that I've seen. What? Unbroken. And this is going to be a film, opens Christmas Day, is it?
Yes.
I mean, it was a best-selling book by Laura Hillenbrand for more than 3 years. It was on #1 or #2, back and forth on the, and the movie is very, very close to the book. What did you think of it?
It's a long, sort of tedious film about what I think was a really harrowing ordeal and a very poetic ordeal. And I just think Angelina Jolie as a director just doesn't know how to tell a story, which is disappointing because her first film, Honey,
Blood and Honey,
was actually really sort of starkly a great film that takes place over in Sarajevo during the whole conflict there. And this film, I thought she was going to be able to rise to the occasion, but it's very straightforward and very tedious.
Very straightforward.
Biggest disappointment of the year so far for me, Unbroken. Love the book. How the heck do you take the juice out of that story? But she did. And I think a lot of that had to do with the casting of that actor who did not register for me. There might have been a lot more emotive, dynamic actors to be in that part. Louis Zamperini, the Olympic athlete, later a POW by the Japanese. I'm thinking Oscar Isaacson would have been great in that part.
You know, I think I came at it from a different point of view. It's interesting because Emily and I watched this film together, and Emily had read the book, which was my fortune because I could turn to her and say, they're not going to get eaten by the sharks, are they? So Emily could be my spoiler at times. But granted, it was a very classic style of filmmaking. There was nothing adventurous about Angelina Jolie's filmmaking, but as someone who hadn't read the book, I was still fairly engaged throughout. I do agree with what you're saying, but I still, it resonated more for me.
Read the book.
I think.
You'll like it
better.
Well,
I'm glad that I didn't, because I will read the book based on what I saw, because I know that the book is undoubtedly better than the film.
And the movie ends with a Coldplay song, which is, I don't know, it's just a little strange.
All right, here's one that I'm not going to see. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. Or
Saw
part
1 and 2.
Or 3 or 4 or anything else.
Liked 1, liked 2 less. 3, anybody?
It's definitely the whole thing is economy of diminishing returns, but it's got a fan base. It keeps going. Stanley Tucci is really fun. They're out of the death ring in this episode, and they're actually going around to the impoverished districts and sort of creating the rebel uprising, which will obviously be the sort of what's going to happen in Mockingjay 2, you know. And obviously Donald Sutherland will fall as president. I can only imagine that he will.
And we get to see Philip Seymour Hoffman, right?
Yeah, and he's still around. Actually, you get to see him in this, and you get to see Robin Williams in Night at the Museum as Roosevelt.
Right.
All right, what else do you want to talk about? Into the Woods.
Oh, Into the Woods. So this, of course, is a Stephen Sondheim musical. It's had many planning stages, but it's finally here with an all-star cast. It's fun. I think it's just fun. It's nothing more than that. Meryl Streep is great as the witch. We were just talking... We're not supposed to do this, but we're talking in the green room. The young woman who plays Little Red Riding Hood is probably the best. I think she steals the film. Tom, I'm probably stealing what you're about to say, but she steals the film out from everyone. I mean, it is a tough musical because it sort of unfolds in 2 halves. It's a story of the fairy tale stories, and you find out what happens after. So what happens when Cinderella finally is with the philandering prince?
Yeah, is it happily ever or not? Well, it's not.
And that's the fun treat to it, but it's not for kids. As a matter of fact, my daughter was actually terrified when I was trying to watch this at home. But the costuming and stuff, Johnny Depp is great as the Bad Wolf. Meryl Streep's great, but it doesn't all quite hold together. I think as a stage production, it'd probably be more.
Oh, I totally disagree. I think it absolutely works as a beautiful film. I think the voices are stunning. Emily Blunt can really sing. Meryl Streep can really sing. Anna Kendrick can really sing. It's gorgeous. I mean, and Streep gives us another witch like we've never seen before. Another character in her arsenal. I mean, it's almost a cliche to say she does a great job.
Just not fair. Actually, you know who steals the film is Chris Pine.
Oh my gosh,
I saw this
so
one
funny.
sitting next to Joyce, who was panting.
I was in hysterics.
Yeah,
he's so over the top as this, hero, as this heroic type, and they sing this song called Agony, and it's amazing.
It's very fun.
Yeah, so the one I liked, and I was dying to see it because I remember the case so well from the 80s, was the DuPont murder story.
Foxcatcher.
Foxcatcher, the guy who becomes obsessed with the Olympic. I mean, I turned to my daughter afterwards, and I said, well, who was that played the lead? She says, Steve Carell. Like, you idiot, Steve Carell. I said, oh my goodness, the transformation. And he was so believable as this eccentric, wealthy character who has this obsessive...
Creepy
is the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, it's really amazing to see him do this, and I'm sure he's going to get some recognition at Oscar time because it's against his usual comedic, 40-year-old version things. This is a real departure for him. It's really stark. It's a great performance. 3 great performances in the film, and I think the filmmaking, Benedict Miller, who did Moneyball and Capote, is really sort of become a guy who's made sort of a documentarian about real events in America and really gets into the human aspect of those films.
The pacing, I felt, was so key to that film because you get sucked into this very unnatural relationship that Steve Carell's John DuPont has with this wrestler played by Channing Tatum, who he's moved across the country. I also thought that Channing Tatum was really exceptional in this film as this guy who's swept up into this wealthy family and thinks he's going to have all of this promise when really he's being manipulated in really the most sordid ways.
And let's not overlook Mark Ruffalo. Extraordinary as Channing's brother, older brother, and he plays, I've never seen an actor able to convey so many different things through his eyes, totally different from what he might be saying, and you see every permutation right there. He's extraordinary.
All right, you guys wanted to make sure you hit Birdman too.
Oh yes. I think it was the breakout film of the fall. To me, it was the first great movie of the fall. Birdman. It stars Michael Keaton as a movie star who made his name playing this great superhero, but then wants to develop some acting cred, so he takes a show to Broadway, and he stars, writes, directs, does the whole thing, and it's all the behind-the-scenes stuff shot in what looks like one long tracking shot, and it's Ed Norton and Emma Stone and Zach Galifianakis. It's funny, it's heartbreaking, it's amazing.
The cast is amazing. It's sort of the one sort of nod, wink, wink is, because Keaton played Batman in the original movies, and so this sort of, plays into that, and I think there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff in there, and sort of living the back life in a theater, and sort of the personalities and the hierarchy and the society that goes on there is sort of an interesting look into that life.
All righty, that's it for us, Jared. You're not going to get the last word.
That's my pick for #1 film of the year.
Really?
I got the last word, yeah.
Oh,
no, it is.
You.
It is.
All right, Jared Bowen, Joyce Kullhawick, Tom Meek, thanks so much for coming. Appreciate it.